Monday afternoon means it's time to check in with the team from Carte Blanche. And today we take a closer look at a story I know they've been working on for many weeks. The story of Ozempic and how a life-changing drug for diabetics has become the latest weight loss craze at a very high price for those who genuinely need it. You may know that celebrities the world over are raving about their weight loss using this drug. But did you also know that desperate diabetics are in some cases being forced to access dodgy black market alternatives as a result of that trend? Let's chat to producer Stenette Grosskopf, who worked with Julian Sun on last night's piece. Stenette, always lovely to have you on the show. Welcome back.
Hi, Pippa. Thank you very much.
Sure.
How are you?
I'm well, thanks. And you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
Yes.
Let's just deal with a little bit of sort of practical stuff before we dive into the supply and demand issue. There's Ozempic. I think most people know it by that name, but there are also several other drugs within this category, not identical in makeup to Ozempic, but the same sort of drug known as a GLP-1 agonist. Can you just explain broadly what sort of drug that is and what it does in the body?
It's a synthetic hormone, basically. That has been created to work with our, it's a synthetic hormone that reacts to our bodies, which makes you feel fuller for longer, makes you less hungry, and it also helps the pancreas secreting insulin. So all in all, you basically just eat a lot less. And they also say a lot of your food noise goes away and things like that. So obviously, it's great for diabetics because of the sugar regulating thing, but then, the side effect of weight loss.
Now, you spoke for last night's segment to Dr. Wayne Nell, an endocrinologist, about how this drug can help patients who are struggling with diabetes and with severe obesity. What did he tell you about that, the original intended use of this drug, about what it can do for them?
Well, I think in lower dosages, it's obviously great for diabetics because it as I said, regulates blood sugar and everything. But they found that if you increase the dosage, there's a whole lot of weight loss. And I think the idea is that everything is kind of intertwined. If you're looking at the stats around type 2 diabetics, it's almost 80% are overweight. So I think all these things are kind of tied in together. And obviously with severe obesity comes a whole lot of other comorbidities. So for a lot of doctors, it's almost a no-brainer to use this to bring down weight and bring down all the other associated kind of comorbidities or issues that obese people might have.
Stenette, how long ago did Ozempic start being used by non-diabetics and those just needing to lose a little bit of weight, for whom it wasn't a medical necessity as it is for the obese patients with the many comorbidities you've mentioned? Do we know at what point that sort of shift started happening?
Not really, no. I know that in 2017, it sort of kind of came onto the market. But I would say probably in the last 2 years, especially since Oprah kind of came out and everything like that, the whole world seems to, have reached for it. And I do think that it has a lot of value. The problem just with these kind of things is that, you find a lot of people who are willing to kind of sort of wrestle their GP for a prescription or something. And I think that's not helping the supply issue.
As your piece pointed out last night, what is happening is that the people for whom this is literally life-saving rather than a cosmetic fix, those people who really, really need this drug, Stenette, are currently struggling to find a regular supply of it because it's being used by so many others for other purposes. Talk to us a little bit about, you interviewed a couple of patients about how they are struggling to get hold of it. What did they say to you about how that impacts the management of their medical conditions?
So I think that's the biggest problem is the interrupted supply. So I think ideally for a drug like Ozempic or any of the other brands to work, it needs to be an uninterrupted supply for a period of time. And that is the problem. You might phone around, find a pharmacy that has some Ozempic you buy, but next month you can't find it again. And I think that kind of, and of course, if it's not a continuous management, you might have your blood sugar under control this month, but next month it spirals out of control again. And I think that is the same for all the other conditions, Say, for instance, heart risk, or, some heart disease risk or risk of strokes, things like that. the idea is that the weight needs to come down. All in all, body health has to improve. But if you're only having the drug intermittently,
it's not an ideal
it doesn't
situation.
have that effect.
Yeah. Stenette, the other very worrying thing that your piece flagged last night is the fact that in desperation, patients who can't find the drug in their regular pharmacies are in some cases turning to the black market, and a thriving market is burgeoning for offering counterfeit versions. Tell us a little bit more about what's happening and why we should be concerned about that.
Well, mostly the doctors are worried because you don't know what are in those drugs. So, some of those fake or counterfeit products might contain nothing that you think is in it, or things and if you're having an allergic reaction or you're having some kind of side effect, doctors and medical professionals don't know what you're having a reaction to. So that makes the treatment of that quite difficult. Most of the doctors we spoke to have indicated that in the last 6 months or whatever, they've at least treated one patient who got severely ill from using a fake product. So there is a big worry about it. But, people will do almost anything to lose weight. And obviously, some people might actually even be turning to the black market for legitimate use, as in maybe a type 2 diabetic or something. But it is a problem, as with any other counterfeit, and especially with medication.
Yeah. These patients you spoke to, obviously, as you've pointed to, the risk for them is the interrupted supply compromises their medical treatment. But I'm interested to know, Stenette, what they said about the impact on their mental health, because more than one of them pointed to the fact that having this weight makes such a difference in management of their underlying condition had been not just a physical game changer, but a mental game changer as well. There is so much judgment and stigma wrapped up in issues of weight and of obesity. And for somebody to have grappled with that their whole life and finally have an opportunity to sort of escape that and then have it taken away from you, from under your feet, as it were, must be heartbreaking.
No, I think so. I think it's very difficult. And then also, there's even stigma associated to using Ozempic itself, because you sort of feel like you might have been failing. Other people can just, go have exercise, go on a diet and lose weight. So there's a whole lot of stigma involved in that. And I do think that it's hard, if you are overweight and you've spent a lot of time in your life trying to lose weight and then you find something, but even that comes with stigma and comes with no guarantee in terms of being available, it certainly does take a toll.
Just for anybody who's come in late to the conversation, we're chatting to Stenette Grosskopf, who is one of the producers from Carte Blanche, who worked on last night's segment about the use and I don't know if I should call it abuse or misuse of Ozempic. We are talking about a drug which was developed intentionally for use by diabetics and those suffering from severe obesity, which has had life-changing impact for many patients in terms of their ability to manage their sugar levels, to manage the weight that goes with their condition, and all of the related health problems that come with that. To now see it being used by those wanting to lose a couple of kilograms, mainly for cosmetic reasons, and finding that interrupts their ability to get hold of the drug and use it for the medical management purpose it was intended for. Very, very interesting and thought-provoking piece. Stenette, what was also clear is that there's some degree of where the medical professional sits in all of this. There are some activists saying, the big question here is about who has access to this drug at all because of its high cost. There are others saying the main thing is keeping it for the use of those who need it most desperately, that it shouldn't be taken away from them and put in the hands of someone trying to lose a few kilos for an upcoming wedding or something like that. Yeah. Is there some disagreement in the medical fraternity around its use off-label?
I think so, definitely. But I do think that the doctors specifically who are, the whole thing around treating obesity has changed over the last, couple of decades. I think there are doctors who are understanding that that's a medical problem rather than just a cosmetic or a lifestyle problem. It goes far beyond that. So I do think that there are some people who are still kicking against it, who still believe that we can treat obesity just by changing lifestyle. But then there are some obesity experts across the globe that are starting to understand that if it was that easy to be thin, we'd all be thin. And so, so I think Professor Francois Venter said it best, that once the weight is on, unfortunately, people need chemical help to get rid of it. And so, I think there will always be debates around, whether you should be using medicine for this or that. Similar to, mental health conditions. Some people will say, just get some exercise, go out and walk in nature and you'll be fine. And then there are other doctors who will say, but you have a chemical imbalance, you need medication.
Very tricky space. Stenette, that the bottom line of the piece last night, though, was that the people who are really suffering the impact of the run on demand are those for whom it is a life-changing necessity. So my final question is really about, is anybody doing anything to increase the supply into the market? I mean, surely the drug manufacturer who makes these drugs must be saying more and more people want it. Let's make more and more of it. Are they limited in terms of their capacity to produce it? Do we know? I mean, is the answer as simple as saying everybody can have some if they make more of it?
I think to some extent, yes. But I read some articles in the New York Times or whatever about Novo Nordisk specifically, who makes Ozempic. They've increased their company however many fold. They've got factories, plans online of new factories everywhere in the States and in Denmark, other places in Europe. And the demand is literally just that big that they cannot keep up.
Sure.
I think they sold something like $30 billion worth of obesity and type 2 diabetes related drugs last year. That's a lot, and still it's just not enough. So I think we'll get to a stage where they can kind of saturate the market. But at the moment it was just, I don't think they foresaw that there would be such demand so quickly.
Stenette Grosskopf, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. One of the producers of last night's segment on Carte Blanche, along with Julian Sun.